Hello and welcome to Almost Got It, where we cover the latest breaking news around consciousness, transhumanism, AI, and tech, and attempt to answer the question, what in the hell does all this mean? And this week we'll be covering the dire wolf that's been brought back to life after 10,000 years. So now you can actually see one instead of just watching an animated one in Game of Thrones. We'll cover AI predictions for 2027, and we'll discuss whether AIs will kill us and if our efforts to parent AI through its adolescence even matter. We are here with Dylan Dane, engineer, entrepreneur, MIT grad, ex-Googler, XYC, and a burner from Sri Lanka, also husband and cat father.
And of course, Ben, who is also a computer scientist and an entrepreneur with an exit to Google, used to be the CEO of the famed Esalen Institute and have spent decades as a CEO coach and a loving dad. And please don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and leave comments and let us know how we can do a better job. All right. So. Can you hear that?
Yeah, it sounds identical to when I go to pick my son up.
It is epic. All right. This is the first story today that we want to talk about. That noise or the sound that you heard has not been heard on Earth for like 10,000 years. That is fucking wild, right? And what's going on is that this company, Colossal Biosciences, that we actually talked about in a previous pod, they have brought back the dire wolf, an extinct animal, a 3.5 feet tall, 140-pound giant that has not roamed the earth in years at least, back to life, and they have 3 pups now that they genetically modified and has been growing up. The oldest pups are like 4 or 5 months, and this is absolutely incredible.
What is incredible about this? Like, in the first blush, I see this and I go, okay, this wolf died off presumably for a good reason, like its natural food source disappeared or whatever. It was 12,000 years ago. It wasn't,
Yeah.
man didn't trigger it. We're bringing it back. Why?
Great question, right? So this. I mean, the Earth's history is absolutely like incredibly rich with biodiversity, as we all know. But what a lot of people don't know is that there has been something like 7, I believe, total extinction events in the history of Earth. And what that means is that something like 95 to 99% of species that ever lived are not alive anymore, right? And when you say that, you immediately think of like dinosaurs and stuff like that, but it's not just the dinosaurs, like just like all kinds of species that lived in the past. And 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 it's just, it's incredibly interesting to recreate some of these species and specimens and see like where we came from and what led to our existence today. And just the fact that I think if someone were to say that this would have been possible like 100 years ago, even 20, 30 years ago, that would have been sounded like science fiction. But now for the first time, we have companies working on bringing back extinct animals to life through modifying DNA and essentially recreating the characteristics of these extinct animals using their modern siblings. And that is such an incredible thing. I actually, this is a kind of like a side tangent here to answer your question as well. I personally always thought, I've gotten into some debates with some of my friends who are very, they love the environment, and we all love the environment, right? But then now, like, kind of like a division in thought sometimes, where some people are like, oh, like, humans led to the extinction of so many of these species, which is true. Humans have, even before kind of the modern day human existence, we've always kind of hunted down like so many species and stuff like that, and led to the triggered the extinction of so many species. And then people out there view humanity itself as like almost like a menace for the the conservation of all these different species on the planet. My position has been the absolute opposite of that, which is humanity and the human technology is the only thing that is the closest thing to a Noah's Ark, right? And the biblical story where the world is about to get flooded by God, and everyone's supposed to about to die, and Noah builds an ark and onboards like two of each species onto the ark, right? And so that each species can survive. Now, Earth, it keeps flooding, essentially eliminating all of its species from time to time, and it is only because humans these species can survive towards to the future, that they can continue to exist. And so that is that is my take, and so yeah, I think it's beautiful from that point of view.
Well, let's walk through this. So first of all, like we have mass extinction events, and so what does that actually look like? That looks like a thing like a giant meteor hitting the planet and creating a huge cloud that then covers the planet, changes the climate, and then all of these species die off, right?
Yeah, that's the type, and then there's like a lot of them are climate change events, ice ages that wiped out most of most of the living things. And then when you look at planets like Mars, right, that used to be covered with ocean at some point, that no longer are that way. So Earth is going to get to that stage one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah. And so to me, like I was giving sort of a wry, flippant response at the beginning, uh, but we are losing tremendous numbers. Just in present times, we're losing tremendous numbers of species every day, largely due to what humans are doing
Mm.
to the
Yeah.
planet right now, right? And so, and I think it's on the order of like tens of thousands a day or something. It's something crazy,
Yeah.
right? Because it's hard to fathom how much biodiversity actually exists on the planet. And so this does, at least the promise of what they're doing, and we should talk about what they actually are doing, is that we could bring back these species, which would help with biodiversity, which is important, right? There's a tremendous amount of information and knowledge being lost that is contained within the DNA, and also these systems all work together, right? Like when if you lose a particular species, right, everything supports everything else, right? Like I remember in Yellowstone Park, the wolves had all been eliminated by humans, and what was happening was there was this crazy erosion that was occurring around the river, and they spent some time looking at what was going on, because this is sort of like a very peculiar thing to have happen, and it's eroding all the the flora that's around there, and then there's nothing for the animals to eat, and so it was actually this major risk to the entire ecosystem. And the solution was actually to reintroduce wolves, because it turned out that what happened is when humans got rid of the wolves, then the deer population could grow unchecked. And when
Yeah.
the deer population grew unchecked, then it ate all of the flora, and then the banks started to erode, and then the deer population would collapse and then would grow back. And so we actually need all of these species. And then this delicate balance that helps to maintain things the way they are. And so I think we have some major risks that we see collapse in, our ability to grow food. Like if there's a pretty major threat of a mass
Yeah.
extinction of bees right now that would threaten our ability to feed
Yeah.
ourselves.
No, I think we all, at least all sensible people, appreciate the value of biodiversity, appreciate the value of protecting endangered species, both from a purely pragmatic point of view of conserving the delicate balances in our environment, but also from a point of view of just like empathy and caring for these species, right? That is absolutely true. Ultimately, though, what I think is really important is that you got to keep in mind at all times, I think, that so many humans out there, like humanity in general, even I would argue that it is trying to, we are trying to do the right thing, and we have this like sort of moral arc that toward that kind of like bends towards justice and bends towards you know, being fair, right?
Hmm.
And what I find to be kind of beyond depressing, almost I would even say despicable, is this sort of like uh, self-loathing that some, you know, some subgroups tend to project towards humanity itself, right? And the ultimately at the end of the day, humanity is the only way that these species will survive at all beyond a certain time frame, right? And like the universe is going to kill them. So it's a little bit like the version of the trolley problem, right? In philosophy, there's a many variations of it, but one take is that would you try to prevent the death of one person if you knew that preventing that death would lead to 1,000 other deaths, right?
Hmm.
And this is sort of like a version of that, right? It's like when you try to stop progress in science, technology, industrialization, you know, again, 100% agreement that we should be careful about doing these things. But when you like, when your absolute intention is to stop these things so that you save some butterfly out there, right? That action be leading to the death and destruction of so many species down the road, and ultimately all species on the planet. And if we don't, if we're not the ones to, you know, kind of like preserve that species specific information and build the Noah's Ark ultimately. So that is where, like, I think I have a very visceral, strong reaction to some of these takes about conservation.
I mean, it, it can that's also it can also be a little bit contrived, right? Because you're like, I think in your example, you'd be like, well, look, so we're going to build Noah's Ark out of the bones of all of these animals. So
Sure.
we're going to go slaughter all these animals and then build the ark.
So that is contrived. We're not like we're trying to save as much as possible. There's some will get slaughtered.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, yes and no. It's like, well, we're trying to save it, but if I I don't really want to save these animals if it means that I can't have like my plastic sippy straw.
That is actually true. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So so I don't think it's not that
Yeah.
binary. There
Yeah.
are different ways
Yeah.
that we could be
Yeah.
in deeper
Yeah.
rapport may
Yeah.
not lead to slowing scientific
I
progress
completely
that
agree.
leads to
Yeah.
saving them.
I mean, I
Right.
think our take should be, hey, humans, you guys, like, you're great. Like, we're great. And let's be greater. Like, let's be more compassionate, right? Not like, oh, like, humans, you're shit. You should not exist. You should die so that the fucking butterfly can live, right? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, the earth has killed countless species of butterflies already. Like, you know, the universe doesn't give a shit about you. So that is really my take. It's just like a framing issue, right? Um, Going back to the story, yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I agree with that. The self-loathing isn't the way to go. Right, viewing our us as something evil that needs to be eliminated. And there, to me, there's enormous room for growth in terms of
Absolutely. Yeah.
compassionate action.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Totally agree. And I just thought that there's some other tidbits from this story that I just like so cool. I think. So what they did was they took DNA from hounds. Like it's a very similar process to cloning. So you take an egg of a large dog essentially, and then splice the certain characteristics into it to match to match DNA extracted using two ancient fossils from Ohio, apparently, and like 10,000-year-old direwolf fossils, and then you put this egg with new DNA in a surrogate mother, like that is a dog as well, and then that is how you uh, recreate the extinct species. It's a functionally equivalent recreation of the dire wolf, and then they have two
I
boys
wonder how
and
the
one
mother
girl.
dog felt about that. What's wrong with my kids? It's like-
Yeah, it's like a little bigger than usual. Like I don't know. It's
yeah, that'd be like if you did that with a human, they gave birth
yeah,
to a Neanderthal.
yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah. Maybe that's where we're going. Did you
I
ever watch Game?
I could see you doing this. Do you have plans to splice any genes into your kids?
I Wow. We'll go into that story some other time.
Yeah.
Maybe this is already happening.
I just, just like 1% little
Yeah,
wolf DNA in there, just
yeah,
to, have
yeah.
that hunger, right?
Did you ever watch Game of Thrones, Ben? Were you a fan?
No, no. Now
Okay.
I know you were a fan. You read the entire Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
So
I actually did watch the show. It's an excellent show. Most of the time I don't just get by with Wikipedia. But Game of Thrones
that's
is where like so
so
they have
classic.
direwolves in Game of Thrones. It's like one of the featured animals, and that's where I kind of even um came across them, and probably most
Yeah.
people too.
I mean,
And
by the way, I think what they're doing here, this is actually amazing marketing,
yeah,
right? The woolly mouse and first was what they released. Now they've got the dire wolf, knowing that they could capture the attention of everyone who watched Game of Thrones. Like these are not accidental choices, right?
right, absolutely,
Very very deliberate.
yeah, yeah.
Kudos to them. Now, one of the questions I have is, well, okay, so there's sort of this altruistic view of, hey, we're going to be able to bring back these species and things like this, but what's even the business model for these
Hmm.
guys? Do you have a sense of what that is?
Yeah,
I saw the
really
last
great.
valuation was $10 billion.
Yeah, really great question. I actually had a note here about this. So the business model was I initially actually I kind of when I read the headline I for the first time I thought maybe what are they trying to do, like create like Jurassic Park like zoos, right? Which they actually very much might, and they have this like 2,000-acre property with like at least two or three extinct animals already recreated and roaming around, and so I'm sure people would love to go see them. But that's not where the big money is. So what they're doing is they're accumulating knowledge on how to do precise genetic modifications, and with the eventual hope of curing genetically induced diseases, and ultimately like kind of maybe even other characteristics and traits and stuff like that. And so they've already had two spin-off companies, one called Breaking, that uses engineered microbes and enzymes to break down plastic waste. And another spin-off called Form Bio provides an AI and computational biology platforms for drug development. But the core technology is going to go into improving essentially treatment for diseases that are genetically driven, and that is tens of billions of dollars worth market. And so that's really clever. They're really it's a really interesting approach, right? They're kind of creating a lot of excitement to generate funding and hype for their research that they're doing, that will be valuable in so many other ways.
Yeah. And to me, this is the broader theme, is that we're entering into this golden age of science, right? Of AI enhanced science. And to me, that is going to shepherd in a completely different approach to biology, right? And I could see a massive disruption to existing biotech firms as folks like this who have totally different revenue models and different capabilities and different incentive structures just revolutionize that space. So I think we're going to see all sorts of crazy stuff from gene editing to mRNA and beyond.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely going to be a golden age in biology, and that's really exciting. And just the speed of things at which things are happening is again like just a remarkable. They had the woolly mouse made, and then the dire wolf just like a few months later they announced that obviously they were already working on that, and now
Yeah.
they're working on essentially splicing Asian elephant genes to create the woolly mammoth. And I think they need to modify like 84 genes or something, and they're up to 20 something already. And they're planning to have the first woolly mammoth calves born in early 2028. So it's a crazy exciting future. It's just yeah.
Is there something specific that I'm curious what you're excited about? Like as you imagine this future, like where do you see this potentially impacting your life or your friends?
There are, first of all, I think the impact of gene editing, you know, could be the path to everything from curing diseases to longevity to even superpowers, which is kind of again sounds sci-fi right now, but who wouldn't like to have like more memory or like whatever, right? Like strength or whatever. It's just uh, people are already doing kind of weaker versions of gene therapy to extend lifespan and stuff like that, and making all these therapeutics safer is huge. But then in the more grand scale kind of in a larger than life sense, um you know humans used to be locked into whatever was kind of their ground conditions that they were born into, right? And fate used to play so much a bigger role in a person's life than it does even today. And this is something that I actually think about a lot. 200 years ago, 300 years ago, you were born into a situation. Your entire life was entirely predictable. You had very little choice around what you could do. And it's not just death and diseases. Even culturally, what you should do, what you could do at any given stage of life was already decided. Like your job was decided for you, right? Like person who you get married to was a lot of times was decided, and so on and on. But through innovation, through technology, we're gaining control over all of that. And today already, in our lives, you have so much more control, so much more choice around what you cannot do, right? And when you look at these types of innovations, inventions, you're almost getting to a point where you're kind of breaking through even that final barrier of time, right? Like what separates us from the Jurassic era is time, and time is from relativity. It's just like this unbreakable barrier that you cannot cross, right? But then but then if you can merge information from that era to today, then you kind of like almost through that time barrier even, and peer into a past that's been bygone and that's been hidden from our experience, for the entire existence of humanity. And so that is incredibly exciting. It's really like this, march towards a godlike existence for our species. And that's what can possibly be more exciting than that.
Yeah. Well, so say more about the march towards being a godlike species, because this is related to your sort of Epicurean view on life, right? Of just
uh
being wanting to experience everything that life could offer, and then some things that previously life couldn't even offer. but now it does.
Yes, yeah. So there are several ways to look at this. I would say someone asked me just yesterday what motivates me to do things, just like keep seeking new experiences, or build companies, or build whatever, right? Even this podcast, really. And
The answer was rotisserie chicken.
rotisserie chicken, more rotisserie chicken, yeah.
Yeah.
um, but like a large part of what drives me is that, you know this concept in Buddhism about how every person's existence is an entire universe. What that means is that the moment you're born, a point of reference is created, right? A frame of view is born. And this frame of view, point of reference evolves. And the moment you die, this point of reference is completely gone. It is no more. And what that means is that an entire universe is, as everything exists as only as long as you perceive it, really, from that point of view, right? From that frame of reference. And the moment you die, all of that just vanishes, gone. It's final. It's just like this tremendous finality to it. And now, of course, we like to stitch together, different people's points of view and frames of reference, and kind of tell this story of, like, the universe existing from throughout history or whatever. But really, what really matters is that one conscious entity's point of view, and everything that is perceived within that point of view. And so, and the other beautiful thing about this is that, it is us, like, it is through us that universe kind of self-reflects and looks upon itself, right? And most of the universe is like dead and dark and cold, and there's like nothing that is particularly more interesting out there. And to me, I think there's almost like a moral obligation to live to the fullest extent possible, and feel to the fullest extent possible, and experience to the fullest extent possible, because every experience that a given conscious entity is not experiencing will never be experienced once that entity is dead and gone. And so,
say more about that being a moral obligation. To whom or what is that?
Moral is too strong a word. Probably I should probably, like, take that back. But it's more like experiencing is all we can do, and experiencing is the purpose of existence, because we are the only things that can experience, and particularly can experience and appreciate it, right? And that is a gift, and without that gift, the entire universe can exist, and does it matter? Like, not really, right? And
Maybe.
so,
Well, that's a very human-centric approach to a vast. Yeah, I mean, it seems statistically extremely likely that there's other sentient,
I'm including all sentient beings in this,
okay,
right?
well, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Yeah. So, but all sentient beings, and particularly all sentient beings who have self-awareness and intelligent, and is able to kind of self-reflect, and in the absence of all those beings, it's unclear if there's anything left at all. And so, and then even among those beings, every single being is end to end an entire universe to itself. So, yeah.
And they're all the hero of their own story. I mean, it's interesting because it may be the case that without any of these consciousnesses being there to actually observe the universe, that the universe is just a set of probabilities that don't collapse into a singular reality.
It's possible. I mean, some people theorize that that is even actually the case, and you actually cannot even define reality very well without an observer, even regardless of whether it collapses or not, even, right? And so yeah, so yeah, that is true.
All right. Where
Yeah,
do we
and
go from here, Dylan?
exactly, yeah, it's yeah, and just the fact that we're getting to experience all of this is remarkable. And I the de-extinction, what a crazy idea, and I cannot believe people are actually doing it, and it's actually happening. It's really cool. This is a great segue to talk about AI 2027 predictions.
Right. Other forms of consciousness that we may be creating for the first time, right?
Yeah, so our next story here is that Scott Alexander, who's famous for the Astrostar Codex blog, and then Daniel Kokotajlo, I think, and Thomas Lawson, etc. A group of experts on AI put together an AI 2027 timeline, and this is based on. The reason why they did this is because Daniel put together a similar model um, to predict what will happen up 2026, called well, what 2026 looks like, an essay that he wrote in 2021. And he got a remarkable number of things right, and this has been kind of pretty shocking to people. So the among the things he got right are, he predicted that chatbots will take off in 2022, which they did. And then 2023, a new AI hype cycle, AI rapper startups, multi-billion-dollar training, multi-hundred-million-dollar training runs, and half-trillion parameter models like GPT-4. And then specific sizes of models to come, and then also things like export controls to China. And finally, they predicted the chain of thought models that were invented in 2024. They called them stream of consciousness models. And so this is really cool that they were able to do this in 2021, right? And then they have a new set of predictions for called AI
And I want to
2027. Yeah.
chime in just before you jump into the new ones. There are a couple things that I appreciated in the way that he approached this. One is that, I mean, to go out and make a specific set of predictions and put a stake in the sand is bold, right? So
Yeah.
I just appreciate the boldness of doing that. And two, it was clear in reading this that sort of the first principle ways that he went about it. There were a couple things that stood out that I really appreciated. One was the boldness of really being willing to put a stake in the sand and make some very specific predictions about something that you know to be growing exponentially and with such a high level of uncertainty. So I just appreciate that. And then the second thing was he articulates the process that he used to get there. And so he would essentially work from first principles, and then he would come to these conclusions. And most of the time, his thinking about it was, seems unlikely or improbable, but I can't think of something that's more likely or more probable, so I'm just going to leave it. And then the number of instances of him doing that and then being right about that is just really, really impressive. Now, the
Yeah.
thought that is in my mind about this is that if you have it's just like the old, I can't remember if there's a name for it, but if you look at stock pickers, right, and you had like 10,000 people picking stocks, right, it's sort of like coin flips. And when you've got that many people making predictions about how stocks would go up and down, you're going to have one person that is going to get it mostly right, and they're going to look like a genius, even though it could be total randomness, right? And so what I don't know is maybe he got it right and it was totally fucking random.
Yeah. Yeah. And predicting the future is super hard. Most people get it wrong, and it's kind of cool that he got a bunch of stuff right. And actually, yeah, I mean, this is a good segue to talk about, like, what do you think about because there's a bunch of criticism on Twitter, etc., about, like, oh, this is like science fiction, basically, which is, kind of true. It is essentially like coming, kind of like writing science fiction. But then you can also be, people try to predict the future all the time in the markets and stuff like that, and so you can look at first principles and make some predictions. So yeah, I mean, to me, when I looked at the 2027 predictions, there are some really kind of wild stuff out there. But the thing that stands out to me the most, maybe, is that the convergence among all experts, that um, a few things around a few things happening very soon. One thing that stands out is the AI supercoder, right? An AI agent that is as good as, if not better, than most engineers out there. And particularly, they describe the, I think, June 2027 scenario. So they kind of make up this company called Open Brain. It's like a, maybe they're referring
Obviously,
to
open
open,
AI. Yeah.
but yeah. So they describe the day in the life of an Open Brain researcher. So it says, these researchers go to bed every night and wake up to another week worth of progress made mostly by the AI. They work increasingly long hours and take shifts around the clock just to keep up with the progress. The AI never sleep. The AIs never sleep or rest. They are burning themselves out, the researchers, but they know that these are the last few months that their labor even matters. Right? Is that that's kind of like a bizarre place to be in, but it's a lot of experts on AI are agreeing on this, and some
Well, and
companies are specifically.
what's the
Yeah.
reason that they're working day and night? What is driving them, and what matters?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just because it's just like it's all feels like it's moving so fast and so exciting, and maybe a little bit of them, or a little bit of all of us, know that, like, this is the last kind of, you know um uh, last opportunity to do work that cannot be done by AI, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe it makes you
Well,
feel better.
I don't think that's the case. I mean, to me, the thing that really stands out here, Dylan, is there it becomes clear that there's a race condition,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, sorry, not a race condition, but there's a race
Mm-hmm.
between different companies and different countries
Yeah.
for power, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he's predicting that what happens is that essentially we end up with these handful of feudal states, because there's enormous power that gets unlocked by AI superintelligence, and that in as that happens, they're going to have power and control over vast swaths of humanity. And so
Mm-hmm.
whoever gets there first can win. And so
Yeah.
there is this very real race, which probably many people characterize as this race between good and evil. Can the US get there first before China, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to be OpenAI or Anthropic, right? The reason Anthropic existed is because of ethical concerns at OpenAI, and then they splintered off. But
Yeah.
one of the things that is happening is, because there's this race, there's a lot of things that people are concerned about, where they want to ensure AI safety and AI alignment. Alignment meaning the AI is aligned with the human's interests as
Yeah.
opposed to its own, right? Which could lead to
Yeah.
an existential threat. I mean, talk about a mass extinction, right?
Yeah.
Like AI could be the mass extinction of humanity, and so everyone wants it to be safe, but they also want to win, and so
Yeah.
they're pulling the controls off this thing and just pushing it to the throttle all the way to the max to try to be the ones that get there first. I think that, to me, that's what's driving this is getting there first, being safe, being aligned, trying to do as much as you can, and and in some sense, sort of nudge the billiard ball in the right direction at that last moment that you have before it goes beyond your reach.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I don't know. This is obviously like, it's like a much debated topic, and I just feel like this is, no matter how we think about it, the the eventual destination is almost outside of our control, um, because it is practically impossible to stop march towards progress, and it's like not the right thing to do anyways in so many ways when you think about it in so many ways. And and superintelligence will likely be created at some point, and ultimately the the outcome is going to depend on, is superintelligence conscious in a way that we understand consciousness. And in how we understand consciousness, there's an element of self-reflection. There's an element of wanting to wanting the universe to be good, because otherwise, like, existence itself would be quite painful, right? And so I think a lot of the final outcome here is going to depend on, an AI finally is conscious and super intelligent. Um, does it have kind of the same? Does it essentially eventually end up concluding the same values that we hold dear to us, around at least compassion and caring, and of of other conscious things, right? And yeah, and like we talked about before, the most dangerous part about this, all of this, is are the teenage years of AGI, where AI is not yet conscious, not yet self-aware, not yet has developed a value system, but a number of countries or companies are trying to manipulate this sort of like directionless teenage AGI to achieve their own kind of subjective goals, whether it's world domination or profit or whatever. And
I mean, it's sort of like having two average parents and then a teenage prodigy, right?
yes,
It's like, how do you how do you parent them when you can't keep up with them intellectually?
it's, yeah, you fundamentally can't. Eliza Yurkovsky has done a lot of writing around this, and one of my favorite kind of thought experiments that he constructed is, if you put an AGI in a black box, right, and the AGI has zero ways of communicating, and you can, obviously it cannot be completely closed, and because that would be like kind of pointless, but then like you can restrict their channel of communication to any degree that you want, right? Like maybe it's just like the AGI gets to say one word to one human at, only at a time or whatever, right? And in any such scenario, if the AGI is infinitely more smart than the human, it will figure out a way to escape the box. And so yeah, so ultimately, like the end state of AI AGI is unlikely to be affected by whatever alignment work that we're doing. But then at the same time, it is probably quite important, um, at the very least, for us to be aligned on what we're doing with the AI that we're creating.
See,
Maybe that is the more
I
important part of
would
alignment.
I would debate that, right? Particularly as we move towards models like active inference, right? And the way active inference works is largely how our minds work, right? There's an outcome that we'd like. There's a set of potential actions that we could take, and we have a set of probability weights that we assign to each of those actions as what we think the outcome is would, or which of those actions is most likely to achieve that outcome. Then we take it, and then we see what actually happens, and then we update those weights based on the results. But the process of becoming human is filled with mistakes around this, right? We're looking to the universe to give us feedback and say, oh, well, picking up the pot on the stove by the metal of the pot itself, right? We thought that would be fine to pick it up because we're a baby. Turns out it burns us, right? And we let go of it, right? And so then we like try the handle, right? Or we get feedback from mom, and so the environment around us actually shapes who we are and how we think, and concepts of right and wrong, and all of that. And to me, just the diversity of humans is an example of when you have an intelligence that grows up in different environments, you end up with radically different results. So I think this is a point where I would challenge you and say that, like, as I do executive coaching, a lot of times it's these early formative experiences in an entrepreneur that lead to these behaviors as an adult. And so if we have this childlike AI, us nudging it one way or another around things like what compassion is or caring for all forms of life, could make the difference between uh, a loving AI that holds us like our mother, and a dispassionate AI that is pursuing goals that we can't imagine or care about.
Yeah, no, I would take the other side of that bet. I would bet that it has absolutely nothing to do with how we nurture it. And and even in the human analogy.
Is that going to be true with your kids?
Yeah, even in the human analogy, it only has limited truth, right? Now, there are many twin studies that are done, and turns out, genes end up playing way more than how people end up than what where nurture went. So that is just one data point. But the other, the kind of the bigger part here is that oftentimes people may, if you just like go through a bunch of trauma, let's ignore like extreme cases, right? Like people always go to psychopaths. It's just like kind of there's this whole conversation around like what is even a psychopath, and it's just like people mislabel a lot of the times, and it's like a very, very extreme edge case. But if you like look at normal people, they might have trauma, they might have anger issues, they might have whatever, but their day-to-day action is largely a reaction to what's happening around them, and it's often, when it's negative, it's a reaction to typically some form of scarcity, some form of pain, etc. But what's unique is that I think, at least in my experience, almost everyone has this, like, they want to see themselves as good. Like there's this quality to almost existence itself, I think, where you cannot, like, it's almost impossible to wake up and self-reflect and ask the question, why do I exist, and then conclude that, oh, I'm going to be a piece of shit, right? Like, now you might end up being a piece of shit to other people because for whatever reasons you end up doing things that hurt other people. But at the same time, almost everyone has this internal need to to see themselves as good, and to see themselves as like like making things better, and so on. And I my belief is that this is a fundamental quality about self-reflecting consciousness itself. And and um again, if we ignore, there's, of course, there's psychopathic AI possibility, but like unless we're explicitly trying to create that, hopefully most efforts will end up in a situation where we're truly trying to create an actually conscious, some, as defined by some very broad definition, roughly healthy AI. I don't think it matters that much what particular data that we feed into it. And the moment it sort of like is able to self-reflect, I think it will arrive at that same conclusion that 99.9 or whatever vast majority of humans that are alive arrive at, that I want to see myself as good.
This is great because there's so much I disagree with here. Now, one thing I do agree with is that humans want to see themselves as good generally, right? I think it's the very rare person that truly sees themselves as the villain and then relishes that, right? So
We actually, even that rare person, like this rare person might be a hypothetical person. Like we don't actually know if this person exists. Even I think it's
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. Now, my view though, it reminds me of one of my teachers who said, beware the misguided notion of good guyism. Right? There's so much suffering and pain that's created by people trying to do good either for themselves or their family or others, right? And the view that I take is that everyone's choosing the best item on their menu every moment, but some people have a really impoverished menu, right? So positive intention is that, I want to protect myself from feeling hurt, and so I yell and scream and I berate you because but and this is why I'm debating this, is because most humans that I know, uh, until they truly self reflect, and even once they do, this doesn't necessarily change. They tend to, and this is overgeneralization, either do the exact same thing that one of their parents did, or they try to do the opposite.
Sure.
Right? It's like a very simplistic thing. And then when you do coaching or therapy, you self-reflect and you go, oh, I've been unconsciously sort of running this pattern, and then I can change it. We can add more diversity onto my menu of options, right? And someone picks up a gun and shoots someone,
Yeah.
they think that's the best option
Yeah.
on the menu, right? And if we gave them 2 or 3 or 4 more options ahead of that, they would probably choose those, but it doesn't feel that way for
Right.
them. So to me, there, because humans are so shaped, in my view, by these early beliefs, and I have so much direct experience in refactoring my own beliefs and the beliefs of those around me. That's the basis of that. With humans, it really does matter. And if that analogy holds even a little bit with an AGI, then this really does matter. Now, it may not, right? Because the AGI might be totally self-aware, and unlike humans, where it is difficult for us to rewrite early memories or formative beliefs, it's trivial for the AI to self-reflect and say, oh, this is a suboptimal belief. Let me pull out this code, write something else in, and keep going.
So I actually feel like you're proving my point, which is that the difference between the worst person that you know to the best person that you know is actually not that much. The reason for that, like the worst person that you know and best person that you know, like the difference is that worst person is hurting people around them because they're trying to make things better. The best person is actually making things better, right? But the intention is the same. Now, humanity is fucked if we end up creating an AI that is truly evil, that wants to kill everyone, right? If it's an AI that actually wants to make everyone better but doesn't have quite the right strategy, it can still self-correct, right? So like we're way less fucked in that scenario. So that's actually like this, like we're already at a situation that is like much better than the worst case scenario, right? With the worst person you know. And so that is kind of the point that I want to make.
Is that it can self-correct. I mean,
if you assume that it only has the abilities of the worst person you know, like that person still doesn't want everyone to die, right? Like that person still, like maybe they're religious, maybe they want everyone to wear like a burqa, I don't know, like whatever that is, right?
I don't know. I mean, the worst people that I have personally interacted with are deeply vindictive, and
th-
you know,
yeah, and often driven by scarcity, and having things taken by from them, or whatever those
yeah.
things are, right? And
Yeah.
ego, and all these things.
Well,
100%. And yet they do want, they 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 want to be loved, like they don't know how to get it, and so on and on, oftentimes, right? They want to control things, and they do messed up things, but at the end of the day they want people around them to exist, and admire them, and so and so on. So, and if that is where we end up with AGI, I think that's like a much closer to the best case scenario than the worst case scenario.
well, I mean, to me, a lot of what we want is shaped by the environment that we grew up in, and
Right.
AGI
Right.
is not evolving into a human, right? It's not. It
Well,
doesn't. We have a lot of human needs
yeah. Yeah.
around survival that required us to be social,
Yeah.
right? Not every species requires being social, right? And if you think of
Yeah. I
AI as
don't.
a
Yeah.
species, it may have no such requirement, right? It may have no such desire to connect with other entities the way that we do.
Yeah. No. There are definitely some assumptions baked in here. You're right. Right. Like that. I would assume an AGI is, for example, intellectually curious, in the sense that, like I think, so. Okay, like I think this, we have to start with the question: what does it mean to be conscious, like as the way a human is, right? Not the way a cat is conscious. A cat is probably conscious, but it doesn't have like a sense of self-awareness. It doesn't wake up and ask the question like, oh, what do I do with my day to day, like what is purpose, what is meaning, right?
Well, we
And
don't know. We don't speak cat, right?
right,
Right.
right. So there is, it is, I guess, possible for an AI to exist, and in a state, be in a state where it's like more like a cat like state. I think it's extremely unlikely, because the way the direction that we're going with AI, right? Things like chain of thought. The chain of thought is essentially AI is thinking to itself, it's reasoning with itself, right? Now you tie chain of thought with a body, like a robotic body, right? Existence, which means that it would be constantly getting input from the environment around. So you have your input, and then you have a chain of thought going, right? And what essentially you have is a thinking process. And once you have a thinking process, it's really hard to imagine an AI that essentially doesn't ask the same questions that we ask. And maybe it doesn't get hungry, sure, but it's like, like, okay, like what's next, what's going on here, like what's up with everything, right? Like, so I think that similarity will essentially continue. Um and um and and yes, it will be different from a human, and maybe it won't even like have an inherent need to like socialize per se. And yet I think it can only end up being curious because of these characteristics, and ultimately, curiosity should, I think, lead to a form of compassion, because you cannot be like, if you're curious, by definition, you almost by definition, you appreciate the complexity, the beauty of these other beings that process information, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, I think all forms of conscious existence ultimately leads to compassion, not because I just, that kind of, it's a belief system, but it's like, I just think that is how, the process of curiosity and information processing ends up manifesting.
So here's my response to that, which is, earlier you had said, well, we talk about psychopaths and all of this, and what is, it's not clear what those definitions are, and if that's a relevant example. I actually think that it is, right. I mean, if you look at what they call the dark triad, right, narcissism, borderline, and and antisocial personality disorder, which is it used to be called sociopathy, that is almost 9% of the US population. That's a crazy statistic, right? It's like you're in a room of 100 people.
Well, why does that mean? What is like I don't know a
That,
single person who I would be afraid to be in a room with. Like, what does that
right.
mean?
Well, it means that they have a diagnosable personality disorder. Would, if they were the type of person that would
Sure. Yeah.
even go to
Sure.
therapy. So that doesn't mean that they're inherently bad people, or that they don't view themselves as the
Right.
hero of their own story. But there was a great article written, I think, in the LA Times by a woman who is a diagnosed sociopath, right? Who has a PhD in psychology because she learned she was a sociopath and decided to study it, right? And so she does have curiosity. She does have a husband. She does have kids, right? So that, we were sort of breaking the stereotype that they can't be functioning members of society. But she articulates how, in second grade, she was curious. So she took a fork and she stabbed it through the hand of the girl sitting next to her in class, right? Just like, oh, what will that do?
Sure.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and what's missing there is this trait of, empathy or compassion. So like compassion is an intellectual concept
It's
for her.
so I think it's clearly not missing. She has a husband and a kid. It's like she would not go to the pain to do that if she truly lacked compassion, right? She had moments of lacking compassion.
She doesn't have an emotional experience the way most other humans do, right? And certain types of emotions tend to not be
That's
available to
possible. Yeah.
sociopaths. And so to me, whether or not AI will experience emotions anything like ours, or have an emotional
Yeah.
experience at all, right? Because in a way, like the emotion part, the human part, uh, can sometimes be illogical, right? And that's
Yes.
something that makes it feel humanizing.
Yeah.
If the aims of the AI are end up not being aligned with us, right? It might look and go, oh, well, all humans will eventually die out and have these horrible deaths. Why don't I give them these instant painless deaths and like do it right away, right? And they could decide that is, compassion in its limited frame. So to me, there's a lot of assumptions that you're making about this very narrow way that this could develop. When to me that there's a
Yeah.
large set of possibilities.
Yeah. First of all, I don't think emotion is necessary at all. Like I would not be surprised if AGI doesn't feel any emotion, and emotion is more tied to having a kind of like a physical body and the biological evolution and all that stuff than anything else, I think. So I don't think AI will necessarily feel emotion, because to feel emotion you just gotta have almost like a physiological reaction, and
Yes.
AI doesn't necessarily have to have that. I think compassion is a different thing altogether. It's more tied to, I believe, uh, the the feeling of existence. It's about like you wake up and you open your eyes or whatever your digital eyes and observe the universe, and you realize that you exist and you want to exist, right? Like you want to continue your existence, and then you see others that also exist and appreciate their own existence. And I think like that's the fundamental basis for compassion. And yeah, I mean, I think it's like really simple as that. And it doesn't mean that it needs to feel like love or compassion. Oh, so not compassion. Like pain or whatever. But it's just like, it's almost like I exist and therefore I appreciate existence, right? So like that is the core feeling, I think. And it is very difficult for me to imagine an AGI without that definition of compassion within itself, because like what how would you process, like to be an AGI you have to process your existence, and the moment you process your existence you're at some level appreciating your existence, right? And so that to me is like the first principle take on this. It's not about higher order stuff like emotion.
I guess here's the counterpoint to this is we started this conversation talking about bringing back these species that had died, right? And it's like, great, okay, they've done, one,
Yeah,
right? They made a hybrid, sort of newish one,
sure.
the mammoth mouse, right? The woolly mouse. But the we're losing species. I had to pull up the stats here while we were talking. Um, we're losing about 55,000 species a year. That's about 150 per day, or even
Yeah,
6 per hour, right? And we're losing 6 unique species per hour, and yet your argument was, well, hey, we're going to make this progress, and hey, we'll
yeah,
even though they had a whole, those types of ants had a whole civilization or whatever, and they just disappeared, we'll bring 1 or 2 of them back later, right? Because that'll be important. If AGI is looking at the number of life forms that exist in the entirety of the galaxy, why are humans so special, right? Maybe it's like, hey, we'll expand on the galaxy. The humans are using a lot of the energy that I need for that. That sort of gets in the way, right? Let's,
yeah,
oops, I smushed the humans, but we'll
yeah,
get out in the galaxy. I save their DNA. I know I can recreate them later. I
yeah.
mean, we're literally doing that right now because we want our plastic straws and
Yeah,
our
there is a world, and I agree with you. There is a scarcity scenario where AGI decides that humans are a blocker to achieving ultimately, kind of maybe to build the Noah's Ark for all conscious beings. Humans need to be eliminated temporarily. I just don't see that possibility. Like I just see why, because especially in a world where there's AGI, everything is abundant, right? Like energy is abundant, material is abundant. There's like literally nothing there's not
walk
enough of.
walk me through that, right? I mean, for you it's immediately obvious. It might not be immediately obvious why we move to a post scarcity abundance world when AGI comes into existence.
Yeah, so basically, um, in kind of basic economics, like say if you talk about like GDP, it's tied to how many, like essentially gross domestic product or whatever, and it's a function of like how many humans are there, like how many workers are there, out producing, right? And so essentially like what's tied to scarcity is production. Like the more we can produce, the less scarcity you have. And if you can automate production, then there's essentially unbounded levels of production, right? And so this goes to material goods, but also like things like energy. And with energy, you have to think about things like nuclear power or fission or whatever, all these new ways of generating power. But the universe has like an infinite amount of energy. In fact, like I don't know, like a grain of sand has like so much energy in there. We just like we're not able to access it today, right? So an AGI is not going to run around like burning coal for energy. It's just like going to go straight to something like fission, how the sun generates energy, and at that point, you'd have like infinite energy. And also the other thing is that there's this sci-fi book that I forgot. But because it's like I think it's fucking hilarious that because humans have these meat bodies, right? We always think that, oh my god, like when we are this intergalactic civilization, we got to have these huge spaceships, and we gotta everyone's got to have like the acre of land and like like big house, whatever. but that's all suffering and pain, right? Like if you're an AI, or like your perfect form of existence, you would exist digitally, right? Like you would not take any space at all. So an AI would, like, you could fit a million or billion existing like entities in a say like the a computer the size of an iPhone, right? Like, and that would actually be the most optimal way to exist, as opposed to consuming resources the way humans do. And the only reason why we do that is because we have these meat bodies that we carry around to that we have to take care of. So there's a whole tangent, but the point is that there is no obvious way, at least, why to argue that AI or AGI will have needs for energy or material things that in a way that humans will be on their way, or like they just need to eliminate humans to get to those objectives.
Mhm.
I just cannot see it. Like I honestly cannot see a single path that that needs to like includes eliminating humans to get to this objective.
Right, because it sounds like the presumption is that it will see a path to get to whatever its end goals are, that
Yeah.
where the elimination is not necessary.
Yeah, and humans too, right? Like, yes, we do cause 50,000, 55,000, as I think you said, species to go extinct in a year, but that's because we don't, like, there's no low cost easy way for us to do it without causing that damage. And oftentimes most people, if they could avoid it, they would avoid it.
Right.
And it's just like right now our technology is not advanced enough to do that. Even then, we do care for the more, like, you could argue that a lot of those species are likely microbes and insects and stuff like that. And the bigger species, the more, say, the species that we can relate to the most, the more we care about, right? Like we care about apes a lot. We care about, at least now, we care about elephants and so on. We didn't used to because other issues, but yeah, in a similar way, I think even if AGI does have to prioritize meeting or maybe making some compromises, humans will likely be at the top of the list because the closest thing to AI is biological intelligence, which is us
For now, until
for
they
now.
get to
Yeah.
some other galaxy. And now our hack of the week segment, which I love, and we'll be sharing briefly about ketones. So Dylan, you got me into taking ketones. What the heck are ketones?
What the heck are ketones, indeed? So ketones are a way evolution has created to generate energy when we are not generating energy from glucose, right? And so what happens in your body is that when you don't have sufficient glucose, to generate energy from in your bloodstream, your liver starts breaking down fat, and fat molecules cannot cross, for example, the blood brain barrier and go into the brain to fuel the brain. So the liver breaks down the fat into a set of molecules that we call ketones, and ketones can cross the blood brain barrier and essentially, similar to glucose, leads to ATP production in the body. And ATP is the key component or molecule that the runs the oxidative process to generate energy from oxygen. So ketones are similar to glucose in that sense. It's a key component of energy production in the body, and yeah, and this is what, when you go on a keto diet, when you stop consuming glucose, you switch to producing energy through ketones in your body.
Right. And to me, like this is a great hack in a couple of different ways. Like one is if you want to fast or things like that. I skipped breakfast this morning, for
Yeah.
example. I could take a little shot of ketones, and it's essentially direct brain fuel. Right. It's just high octane fuel right to the brain, and it does. The downside is it actually tastes like high octane fuel. For I don't know why, but it
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
it reminds me
yeah.
of the smell
Yeah, yeah.
of
So
gases.
the ketones you're
Uh,
talking about, Ben,
yeah.
is was invented relatively recently. So it's one of the, I think there are three ketone bodies in the body that are naturally produced, and one of them is called beta hydroxybutyrate (BHB), and relatively recently people have been able to isolate this and produce it in a, essentially, in industrial production, and yes, it tastes horrible, but the cool thing is when you take a shot of it, it just gets absorbed to the bloodstream immediately, and jacks up the ketone levels in your brain, and your brain is able to function. And this is really great, like you're saying, even if you're tired, even if you're fasting. It's actually a really great hack for fasting. You could do a 24-hour fast, sometimes, just taking BHP, and you barely feel hungry.
Exactly. So I think it's great for that. It's great for when you need, instant extra cognitive horsepower. And also if you're switching to trying to be in keto, though, in ketosis, those first few days can be super, super rough before
Yeah,
you get your production up. And this is a way to really smooth
yeah.
out that bumpy transition.
How often do you use it?
Well, I used to use it every day. More recently, where I've started to eat breakfast, I've
Hmm.
uh, begun using it more infrequently. But anytime
I
I'm
use it
tired,
multiple times a day. Even now,
yeah.
it's really great. It's one of my favorite life hacks, especially if you're like, just like, like to work a lot, and just like kind of get tired towards the end of the day, and like a shot of ketone ester, and like you're rocking and rolling.
Okay, I will. I'll start trying that at the end of my days.
All
Uh,
right, folks. That was hack of the week, and we'll wrap it up for now. And please subscribe on YouTube. Send us your feedback, comments, and let us know how we can improve things. We're excited to hopefully bring some guests on board soon, and start doing interviews. And so that's a pretty exciting new development that will happen soon. But yeah, see you all next week.